All right, and we are live. Welcome back to another episode of the Esports Economics Podcast. Yangsin, what's going on?
Nothing much. It's a lovely Tuesday before majors, so just chilling.
There you go. How's the week leading into majors? I can imagine it's pretty hectic.
Yeah, I mean, coming off the heels of Super Week. Super Week was already
Yeah,
a lot to take in.
yeah,
And the events preceding Super Week is a lot to take in. So I
yeah.
think really just taking this beat right now to really ramp up into what's going to be, the next couple of days of fierce competition. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy week to come on the show. I'm super excited for this conversation. I mean, you guys have been killing it, especially with the NYSL, with the CDL starting up on Twitter and all the social platforms. Honestly, you guys have been crushing it. So I'm super excited to kind of dive into your thought process and how you approach things there. But before we get into like the specifics, just go ahead and give everyone who might not know who you are a background on who you are, what you do, and how you got into esports, social media, and marketing.
Yeah, for sure. So for anybody who doesn't know who I am, which is a lot of people, my name is Yangsin Vazquez, and I am the marketing and social media manager at Ambox. I also do that for the Subliners and the New York Excelsior. So lots going on. And then you said how I got into esports.
Yeah.
I searched up esports jobs on LinkedIn. Frankly, my background is not in esports. I didn't come up in the collegiate scene. My experience with games, esports gaming, was purely from a casual standpoint. I mean, I've been playing games all my life, but I really got into Overwatch when it came out straight out of beta. And that was kind of my jam throughout college, which I was a marketing major. I went to NYU, and I ended up in nonprofit marketing. So the majority of my career had been focused on more traditional marketing practices, email, growth analytics. I did digital marketing, so I was doing paid ads. But I really wanted another challenge, and I always knew that I wanted to get into gaming or media. So one day I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to look up what's in the area. Is there anything that I could potentially do? I just esports jobs in New York was all I put in LinkedIn. And there was one, and it was this job. And now I'm here. So it's been a little over a year now. So super duper happy to be here. And yeah.
Awesome. And I know this is going to be a super generic question, but I know a lot of people are wondering it. So I do want to ask, do you have any tips or advice for anyone who wants to get into esports? Whether it be in marketing, social media, whatever the case may be. I know it's a super played out question, but I think there might be some insight that you can offer that may be like a little bit unique. So do you have any advice there?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't already have some kind of esports experience, whether that be at your school or working with a smaller team who's probably in a challengers or a contenders, I would honestly say find what you are passionate about, find what you're good at, and continue to hone in those skills, because that's what's going to be the key differentiator when you eventually enter esports. Like for me, I had no gaming or media experiences. I worked in nonprofits and I had a traditional marketing background, but that was the thing that set me apart from other applicants, because other applicants, were really into esports, really supported the teams, but didn't have the credentials to back it up. And at the end of the day, my position is still a marketing job. So I need to have the skill set to do so. And not many people know that most esports organizations are incredibly tiny. We have like 20 corporate staff at Ambox. Like we are punching above our weight class. And so having the breadth and the depth of skill will really set you apart, because you're going to need to be flexible. You're going to need to be quick-witted, and you're going to need to know what you're doing in esports. Because a lot of that will fall on you. So I would say if you're not, hustling in esports already, I would get on your game, learn, find out what you want to do, and then really learn that and make it your bread and butter, because that's what's going to make the difference at the end of the day.
Awesome. Now, what does your day-to-day look like in the work that you do? You had mentioned you guys have a fairly small staff and you're wearing a lot of hats. You had mentioned like you're managing 3 different social media accounts, doing some other stuff with marketing. So what does that day-to-day life look like for you right now?
Whew. It could look like a million different things, anything under the sun. Right now, we are focused a lot on growth. I think as all esports teams are, especially considering how young
Yeah.
the leagues are. Overwatch being the oldest, we're going into season 4, but also like Valorant's just starting up. That competitive space is still growing, and we're still learning what this even looks like. So growth is kind of the umbrella of everything that I'm doing. So everything from planning out our strategies and experiments that we want to do throughout our channels, as well as doing the reactive social posting, seeing what other people are talking about. But then still upholding the mainstays, like still making sure our emails go out to the right people. I'm still making sure that our partnership needs are getting met as new partnerships come along and we have new activations, that we're still engaging with our community and making sure those channels like Discord and Reddit are happy and thriving. So it's a lot of multitasking. But my day-to-day just is to be on top of the brands and make sure we're always driving forward.
Got you. And what channels right now are you guys prioritizing as far as growth? Is it kind of a little bit of everything? Is it like Twitter, YouTube, or all over the place?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything for sure. Obviously, you should be where the community is at. And
Yeah.
everybody knows COD Twitter is huge, Overwatch, where people are talking, Twitter, Instagram, all the mainstays, but also trying new things like TikTok. Like, what does Valorant TikTok look like? And how do you speak to the audience on TikTok? Because where your audience are and what they're talking about are different per platform. So you really have to be attuned to like, well, we know there are people here, but what are they talking about? And how different is that from what they're talking about on Twitter or on Discord or on Reddit? And making sure that whatever you're producing or however you're interacting makes sense for the audience that's there.
Yeah. What are some differences or nuances that you picked up on between like you're running socials for NYSL, which is COD League, and then NYXL, which is Overwatch, then Valorant. What are some differences between those communities? I know it's a really big topic right now. The idea that esports isn't really this umbrella term; it's more segmented into little micro communities. What are some of those like differences that you've picked up on so far?
Overwatch Instagram is very opinionated. Like clips that work really well on Twitter won't necessarily resonate the same with the audience on Instagram. I find Overwatch Twitter is a little more loving, a little more discussing, whereas there's a very firm, we like this, we don't like this.
Yeah.
For NYXL. So it's interesting having to take the same content and kind of reworking it and seeing how it fits the audience there. Valorant, I think it's a little more like what is impressive. The interesting thing about Valorant is its esports scene is coming up at the same time as the game. Like we just got episode 2, Act 2 dropped today. And so all those conversations are intertwined. Like, how is this going to affect competitive? But also, how is this just going to affect the game's meta? Like, they're like hand in hand in that way. So those discussions you'll see kind of across the board, but then the medium in which you're discussing those things is different between platforms. I find like clips of actual gameplay for Valorant work well on Instagram, but people like memes and discussion on Twitter.
Got you.
So it's like different takes on the same dish, and really experimenting and figuring out what works across both because it's not the same. So,
what do you have a process for experimenting like that? Because I know there might be some people in the audience wondering, like, I need to test, I need to try new things, I need to kind of see what works, but like how do you actually see what works?
Yeah. And it's both an art and a science.
Yeah.
In that I think oftentimes people get carried away with what they're testing. They're like, oh, we need you to try vertical video. But then, you know what? I thought of this really good idea for vertical video that's completely different from the content we normally do. And you end up with this like layered sandwich. You've changed so many things. And you're like, this worked. And then you looked at it, but you're like, but which part of it? So I would definitely say, one, you should be writing down everything. And documenting it, so then you can actually have tangible evidence that your tests are actually working. And writing it down helps because then you can establish a hypothesis that solely has one variable. Like we're going back to like high school chemistry. Like all your tests should have like one variable. And then also, how are you controlling for other factors? Like how are you looking, like what is your baseline? And then recording like what is the measure of success you're looking at and how long are you going to continue to test that over? Are you going to look at a week? Are you going to just compare two like pieces of content? Are you doing this based over time? So definitely writing it down, figuring out what individual thing you're going to test and how you're going to measure it, I think is the simplest way I can put testing. And obviously there's more than one way to test, and there's several different places to test. So that really depends on what you care about as the individual.
Awesome. No, that's super helpful. One thing I want to ask you about is like, how do you balance the planning ahead and the overall kind of vision for the brand and like for growth and that sort of reactive social posting? Like, I think perfect example, it was like when Bobby Shmurda got freed and you guys kind of played into that on the NYSL Twitter. I mean, you guys didn't know that was going to happen like 6 months ago, but it was a great move to kind of play into that trend. How do you sort of balance planning ahead and having that structure around what you guys want to do versus reacting to trends and hopping on things as they come up?
Yeah, I think it boils down to the brand identity. And really knowing what your brand's values are and how those come across. So as the subliners and as this applies to our Overwatch League team as well, like we are New Yorkers, and that's our key differentiator, that like we are all about New York. We're representing New York on the world stage. Like this is how we come across. And this is our identity and who we are as a brand, but also people and how we want to engage with our community. So knowing that like we are the native New Yorker, born and bred, we are, essentially that. Knowing that that's true and all the cultural nuances that come with being a New Yorker, what does that sound like? And what does that look like? Are two considerations when going into the creative aspects of it. So you'll see that in our branding. Like if you look at our headers, like we go for like the gritty street style. Look, I'm not on the visual creative side, so I can't speak eloquently about those
I have
things.
no clue what's going on that side of things, to be honest.
But there's a visual aesthetic that lines up with like, our aesthetic is based off of, I don't know if you're familiar with, it's called dazzle camouflage.
Okay, I can't say I'm too familiar.
It's what they used in the military or in the Navy on ships, these giant zebra stripes, because it wasn't typical camouflage, but it was supposed to be meant to confuse. I don't know if it's enemies or other countries or whatever, other ships, but it was like hiding in plain sight kind of thing. And that's what the subliner's visual identity kind of is, mixed in with a New York twist. So essentially doing the same thing with our social voice is I'm thinking, all right, I'm a New Yorker, bet. So how does that sound? But also understanding like dazzle camouflage. What does dazzle camouflage sound like? That sounds like somebody who, is willing to take risks, is really flashy, but also really safe and like is knowing what they're doing. So this is very vague and abstract, but translating that into a person, like in terms of like the rap game, Bobby Shmurda is like a New Yorker. So it was big that he was getting released. So it's like, well, I didn't plan on talking to the Ravens based off of Bobby Shmurda lyrics. And, you know, roasting them to the ground, because in all reality, like, they could have 3-0'd us and I wouldn't have any fodder to go off of. So I think that's where the reactiveness comes in, and understanding that brand identity to then have those be your guidelines to your creative freedom.
Makes sense. And kind of going off of that, you mentioned taking risks. How do you kind of gauge when it's appropriate to jump in, when you kind of want to stay on the sidelines? Because as we saw, not even just with that was, I think, kind of minor in terms of risk taking. But we saw yesterday, and even continuing today, timeline got a little bit spicy. Things were happening. Like, how do you kind of determine when to play into that and when to just say, no, you know what, it's probably a little bit too risky, we're just going to sit this one out?
It's always the kind of notion of bite off as much as you can chew. Like, it's an investment. I'm throwing something out there on the timeline that if it doesn't hit, it's a sunk cost. Or if somebody hits me back, that's the L I'm going to have to take. And it's like, how much of what I'm putting out there is worth the risk that I'm going to be taking in? And for example, the beef that was happening on the timeline, we didn't have much stake in that. So it was easy as like a bystander to be like, something's happening over there. And it paid off in terms of contributing to the larger community's conversation around the brawl that was happening in the middle. So that I knew was low stakes, because I wasn't going and pointing fingers at other people. Because that's when you get involved, and that's where the stakes are even higher. And then I would have bitten off more that I could chew. And my approach is, if I'm going to get burned for something, it better be a good reason. So I always pick my battles, and there are times to be loud and rowdy, and there are times to be like, all right, like, this ain't it. This isn't the moment. So I'm going to take a step back and let the community have their own reactions. Like our 2-3 against Dallas, it was a very close game. Like, it was very, like, we popped off at the beginning and then we just couldn't close it out. Whereas we had the ability to say something. Like, we had the ability on socials to put pressure and to gas ourselves up. But I told myself, and I also told our creative strategist, I was like, you know, it's not over till it's done. So let's not go the whole 9 yards, because that'll bite us in the ass. So it's really calculated in the sense that you have to be aware of how much you're putting out there, and the possibility of that getting reverse swept, to put it mildly.
Awesome. No, that's super helpful. And then one thing you mentioned a few minutes ago, talking about your brand voice and how you guys are kind of trying to talk like a New Yorker. How much does that locality, like, and the franchises being centered around a city versus just an abstract esports org that is quote unquote global, does being centered around a city like help you guys marketing wise as far as like establishing yourselves and growing?
It's definitely an approach. As a regionalized franchise, it was important to us that be a part of our branding. And the ways we manifest that is pre-pandemic, it and still now is pretty local. So we were supporting local tournaments, our local LAN centers, and more of a more boots on the ground approach, working with our collegiate schools. New York Institute of Technology even became one of our sponsors, because we were trying to invest back into our greater community. So based upon, I guess this varies from like team to team and esport to esport, but how much, sorry, you can hear New York City in the background.
All good.
But how much you invest back into your community is one marketing approach that we felt would, set us apart from other teams is how much we care about our local community and how much our local community has our back. So I think it's part of it's one strategy, and it's not always the strategy to go. You can still be a franchise and still have people supporting you from different cities, different states, different countries even. So I think it's all about what marketing strategies you employ and how much stake you put into each of them. But it's an important one for us, so we definitely double down on it.
Got you. How do you see that evolving, like as you guys continue to grow? And you might not have the answer to this yet. It's still early on, but like as you guys continue to grow, the league continues to grow, and you guys kind of have more and more fans from either different cities in the US or different countries across the world. Do you still kind of see you guys sticking with that New Yorker vibe, or kind of branching out a little bit more from there?
Yeah, I think we'll always be tried and true New Yorkers. A majority of us are native New Yorkers, so I think that'll always be something we pride ourselves in. But I think the next evolution is, when you think about it, everybody knows where New York City is, what New York City is. It is an icon. It is where people aspire to go. It's where dreams are made. All those kind of things. So you can even elevate it, the brand, to be aspirational. So even if you aren't a New Yorker, that is something that a direction in which the brand can go, that you don't have to be a New Yorker to understand what we're doing or why we're doing it. So definitely something that's a through line in our branding, but can definitely evolve and expand in several different ways.
Got you. Now, one thing that you guys do really well, and I've noticed on the timeline, just looking at your guys' Twitter feed, is a lot of inclusion of like longer form content that's just all on the Twitter timeline versus like some people or some teams will put like clips and kind of tease like, hey, here's a clip, go check out the rest of our YouTube channel, or stream clips and whatnot. You guys have included like full on content series like Zuma's predictions and a few other series as well. What was the thought process behind that versus like teasing part of those and putting them up on the YouTube channel as well? I know you guys did put them up on the YouTube channel, but what was the thought process behind putting it all out there on like the Twitter timeline?
Yeah, so that's actually a product of experimentation, where we used to do teaser clips and we'd be like, watch the rest on YouTube, but we weren't seeing as high returns as we thought we would on the content and how much we were investing into it versus how much people were consuming it, because oftentimes people are pretty stagnant in their behavior. So if you're scrolling on like Twitter, it's gonna have to be like a thumb stopping. That's a buzzword, but like thumb stopping piece of content that's gonna have to be even more significant for you to switch platforms for you to want to watch. And it's hard to determine like all the time that videos are going to be bangers to watch. So it came down to the analytics and testing whether or not just long form would keep people engaged, as well as having those engagement numbers up. And what we found, and this is something that I do now, this is a free one for everyone. But if you post the full thing on Twitter and then you link the YouTube video, you'll see views and engagement on both.
Really? Why do you think that is?
Some people just think Twitter eats the quality away, so they'll be like, I want to watch the full thing on YouTube. But yeah, I'm not sure what the difference maker was in terms of user behavior, but like the content was no different. And when you look at the link attribution on all those videos that we link out, it is Twitter. So I know people are coming from long form Twitter videos to long form YouTube videos. So it was a really interesting like consumer behavior insight that also boosted our growth numbers. But I think we do a good job of mixing like stream clips as well as our long form content. I think the variety like keeps you there, except if it's all stream clips, you're going to be like, I kind of know what to expect. And if that's not your jam, I'm probably not going to get your engagement. So I think a good mix of content will always keep you coming back to see what else is there.
How do you approach including stream clips? Like you said, including that variety, like you want to include them to some extent because you guys are a Call of Duty team or Overwatch, depending on what account you're on. You want to include context around the game, but like you said, you don't want to include stream clips all the time to the point where it's kind of boring. So how do you balance that? How do you kind of vet clips to determine whether this one should go up in the timeline or just kind of stay off of it?
Yeah, honestly, it comes down to two things. Was it a skillful play, or was it a personality building or entertaining piece of content?
Yeah.
And that's one thing that has helped us build up our personalities, because I think that's important for all teams to do. Build up your personalities. Like, these are your stars. Like, these like people on your team are what are who people watch. So they're going to help form the identity of your brand and your social presence. So finding stream clips that show off their skill and talent and why they are where they are helps reinforce the fact that they should support your team because they'll be good in a competitive setting. But also, yeah, like I said, building up that personality. They do something stupid or funny. Like, I don't think I will ever get sick of posting clips where Clay is laughing because his laugh is so unique and so funny. It makes you want to laugh along. And usually if it's accompanied by a funny bit or them doing something silly, like, you're going to want to laugh too. So it's those kinds of things that I'm looking at. And honestly, this goes for all content. If you make it, you watch it, and you don't like it, chances are no one else will.
Yeah, that's a hard one to swallow because like you want to think that, oh, maybe I'm just being hard on myself. And sometimes that's true, but a lot of the times, I mean, there's truth to that.
Yeah, I think you have the potential to get stuck in a rut where you work so hard on this thing and you've got deadlines to meet, so you're pumping out content left and right. But then you look back and you're like, I don't know what that is. They're like, I made it. Yeah, it meets a quota. But you're not enjoying it. You're not having fun with it. Like, the person who is watching it and experiencing it is going to feel that. That's going to come across in your work.
Yeah, definitely. What's your approach? Well, anything other than what you just said, that it kind of does encapsulate your approach. But what's your approach to frequency as far as posting on the brand accounts?
Yeah, I think consistency is key, but only if you have something valid to say. If I have nothing positive to contribute, which is a weird way to put it, but like, if I don't have content that I feel proud of, I feel like elevates the brand in a certain way, or if there's nothing I can say or engage with or interact with that feels like a productive contribution to anything, some people will approach it with the mindset of always stay involved in a conversation. But my personal approach is, if it's meaningless, then like, people are going to see right through that. You should always be genuine. So there have been days where I've literally said nothing on the subliners or NYXL or Ambox for 24 hours because I'm like, it was a dull day in this avenue. So it's like, there's no reason for me to shout into the void. Obviously, if you have the content, don't sit on it. Like, if it works, it works. Sometimes I'll find stream clips and like, there's nothing significant happening that day. So I'm like, oh, the stream clip is great. You know, it meets one of the things I talked about earlier. It's funny. They're doing something. But like, if they're having bad matches, the scrim sucked, I don't have any clips. Nothing's happening in the community right now. There are no games right now. Literally everyone's in a standstill. And I don't have anything else to say. You don't need to fill that void. Twitter especially moves pretty quickly. Conversations come and go. Like, people forget pretty quickly as well. So it's not like your silence will ruin a cadence or ruin your algorithm unless it's prolonged. But yeah.
What about during the off season? Is it kind of just that approach of, if there's a stream clip or something that happens, post it? But I can imagine it's much more difficult when there aren't matches happening. There might be roster moves and stuff like that that could be engaging. But how do you approach that when there really isn't a whole lot going on in the scene? Is it kind of just you put one Twitter account on the back burner a little bit and just kind of let it be while focusing on another one that might be in season, or what's the process there?
Yeah, I mean, even right now we have Valorant's weird because it doesn't have a tried and true season.
Yeah.
But like Call of Duty, we're going full force. Overwatch League hasn't started yet, and like we're in this kind of downtime for our Valorant team for now. So it is a little bit of on season, off season. So we've definitely ramped up our priorities towards the subliners, but when that comes back, I think that is with the expectation of we all have a certain bandwidth, so something's got to give in order for us to produce that high quality content. So being very mindful of what brands need your attention and how to still make engaging content while prioritizing them all and balancing them all. So there are some brands who just like pump out content every other hour, which is, if they have the capacity, that's great. But like even just knowing what I'm capable of running 3 accounts, I'm like, you know what? The subliners have had like a lot of content. I'm just gonna let that live, let that get the engagement. I don't need to talk right now because there's no urgency to speak there. So I'm gonna focus my attention to another brand.
Got you. Cool. That makes sense. One thing you had mentioned earlier was talking about giving your players a platform and building their own platforms for them. How do you guys go about that process? I mean, you have guys like Clay and Tommy Zuma that already had pretty sizable platforms coming in, but maybe younger guys like Mac and Diamond Con this season coming in. Like, how do you guys go about helping them build their personal platforms?
Yeah, I think we can give them the tools, and we can also spotlight them in a way that gives them the chance to shine. I think one unintended thing that came out of Super Week was, we got that cool victory against the Rocker. So Diamond Khan just leaned back, grabbed his phone, tweeting his GGs, something super simple that I don't think he would have thought of in that moment as just a really great moment to capture, and really capitalizing on that, and also giving the players the opportunity to let their voice be heard. I know that particular example isn't a voice being heard per se, but just really trying to elevate them in content and giving them that platform, because Clay and Tommy started there as well, at the very beginning. And it helps that they are really outspoken and audacious about how they participate in the COD community. Whereas I would say Connor and Mac are a little more reserved, ASIM too. So it's kind of like helping. Our content gives them the opportunity to have that and own that. And then we kind of give them what we can to help them do it. But the earnest is ultimately on them. If they don't want to produce content on their own, if they don't want to stream, like, I can't be like, Max, sit down, do this. But I definitely can present avenues and opportunities for him to do that when I can.
Makes sense. Now, how does the challenger scene kind of play into all of this? You guys are one of the teams that does have an affiliated academy team. So how does that play into the picture when it comes to content?
Yeah, it grows the family. I think our NYSL Academy team are a bunch of clowns in the best way possible. I don't know if you've seen any of their tweets, but they dog on each other all the time. And I think it's the funniest thing. They have such loud and bright personalities that it's something we are starting to work on, is building them up as well. Because for them especially, minus Saints, who has already been in the scene for a while and has that notoriety, but it allows everyone else to get a greater insight to who they are and their skill set, because they are all skilled and talented in the scene. So it gives them the opportunity, and it just helps that, again, they're a bunch of bozos that help build out the family even more and give more color and dynamics to our content.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a lot of really good tips and strategies when it comes to social media? Obviously, there's a whole lot more that goes into it, but I think that was a lot that the viewers can take away from that. Now, I kind of want to shift gears a little bit into more of the partnerships and more general quote unquote marketing side of things. How do you approach brand partnerships for the teams and the organizations that you guys operate? What's your process there?
Yeah. So my side of things is I'm not on the pre-sale side. I'm on the post-sale side typically.
Yeah.
So our partnerships team is really incredible at getting brands in the door and partners through the door that really resonate with us and who we are, and tying that back to whatever team we can, and making that content. Like, it's partnerships are always, we're adding value to each other. You bring value to our teams, and we bring value by adding our teams with the partner. So to make those relationships really fruitful, we want to make sure that the content that we produce for those specific partnerships and the way we speak about them helps both of us grow in a way. So my job on the post-sale side is making sure that we're in brand voice, that everything that we're putting out makes sense for what the partner is looking for, to make sure we're all satisfied with the outcome, as well as how we kind of give that to people. I don't know if you've seen it. You should totally watch it. Our Game Fuel RCXD.
The RCXD one, yeah, that was great.
That one was the brainchild of our content team. So Patrick Maloney and Kevin Schlittenhart, shout outs to them for that piece of content, because it was so much fun. And I think that's another example of when you have fun, especially when a sponsor is involved and you're able to hit all the things that they're looking for. That's how everybody can enjoy a piece of sponsored content, and really bringing it to life, and having fun with that in all your marketing feeds. So I definitely try and help steer. My brain is broken today. Steer our partnerships in a direction where we can be successful on channels, and that's definitely with the help of our content team.
Awesome. How do you guys come up with those ideas? Because I mean, looking at it in hindsight, it's genius. The creative was great. The video was engaging, was funny, entertaining. But like, how do you come up with that idea from scratch?
I think understanding what the partner is looking for, what their needs, and what the baseline of the partnership is, and your scope. And then I always like personally asking myself, like, wouldn't it be cool if?
Yeah.
And then just filling in the blank. We had a partnership with Metro by T-Mobile, where it was a hotline where you could call in for all your Cold War tips, and it was like a Billy Mays commercial, like 90s. But wait, there's more style. And that was like, wouldn't it be cool if we just had a hotline? Like, what if you just call in? We didn't know what you were calling in for at the time. We didn't know it was going to end up being a partnership with Metro by T-Mobile, but it just like our creative director was like, wouldn't it be cool if we had a hotline? Not sure for what, but yeah.
Yeah.
And then that just kind of evolved into the piece of content that it was. So
are there?
No, you.
All right. So I was going to say, are there any ideas that you guys kind of thought of in that sort of what if process that, or maybe just a little bit too far out there, but like you would have loved to execute on?
Oh, for sure. I actually, so I don't want to say them out loud because we still may do them, but I think if you can lob something really, really far, there's the possibility of reeling it in and making it tangible and a little less insane. Like, I'm trying to think of other, I don't want to give away our good ideas. But yeah, I don't know. Like,
are there any other partnerships that you've seen kind of in the space that maybe you guys aren't directly involved in that you've kind of looked at and were like, oh, that's a really good idea, or that seems to fit really well?
Yeah, I mean, the LA Thieves did a Dollar Shave club piece of content that was really seamless and made sense with the personalities they have on their team. And we all looked at it and we're like, yeah, that makes total sense. Like, that's a good fit. Like, they did that well. So that's definitely something we looked at on other teams. I'm trying to think. What's an outlandish idea we had? Yeah, I don't want to give it away because we still might do it. So,
okay, well, that's actually a good thing. So that way we can have some more content to look forward to from you guys.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So, like we've mentioned throughout the podcast, I mean, you're running multiple accounts along with other duties that you have. Like, how do you personally balance that and kind of maintain your sanity throughout that process and or keep yourself in a position to actually be creative? Because like you said, you can end up in that sort of rut where you're just pumping out content and it's like not where you want it to be, and you know you can do better, but you're just like, I'm so tired. So how do you maintain your ability to function with all the responsibilities that you have on you right now?
I don't. The blessing and the curse about being a social media manager is that when your for fun thing is also your work thing, it muddies the water. So then you'll never stop working, because once I'm done and I look at my Twitter is just filled with esports, and it'll be 11 at night. Someone will say something stupid and I'm like, that's a tweet. Here we go. Switch accounts, and then we go. So it's really hard to separate these things. And honestly, just logging off is really helpful to stay sane. But it's also like logging on is what keeps you in the loop. So you've got to battle your own demons when you're like, all right, it's time to log off. But you don't want to miss anything. Like, the FOMO is so real because everything is so fleeting. But then you also have to remind yourself that it's okay if you miss moments. Like, Twitter moves so fast, there's going to be another opportunity later down the road, sooner than you think, for you to hop in on and participate in. But, sometimes I just turn off my computer and I go do something not on the internet for my sanity. Because especially when you think about Super Week or majors, or if more than one team is competing at the same time. I've had to cover Call of Duty and Valorant at the same time. So I have 3 monitors, and I had, one game on one game on the other, and Twitter on the other to see what else is happening at the moment. But there will be a possibility in the future that all 3 games are going on at once. I will go cross-eyed and lose my mind. But until then, I think it's taking it in moderation, knowing when to turn off your phone and walk away, and having those moments of reassurance that you always don't need to be online to still stay in the conversation. So, I'm too attached to these things that I can't, like, I'm talking to you right now, but I have 2 of our challengers people on my other team asking me stuff, and I'm trying not to work while talking to you. Because
no worries.
There's always so much to do and not enough time, especially when you are as big as a company you are. And there's always, especially with social media, there's always something you could be doing. So just, choosing the right moments and also knowing when to walk away. Today, I took a 20-minute walk to go get ice cream because I was like, I can't with Twitter anymore.
There you go.
So.
Awesome. Yeah. How do you stay up to date on things? So that's something, I mean, I personally struggle with. 'Cause I mean, like you just said, it's hard to stay up to date with like relevant things without kind of going over the deep end of just needlessly refreshing the timeline to quote unquote stay up to date when it's not really that important. So how do you make sure you're informed on the topics you need to be informed on that are relevant to the accounts that you run?
I think that's a lot of reading and a lot of listening on my own time. Like, when I'm at the gym, I'm listening to Valorant podcasts. But also just talking to other people. What do other people care about in this community? What are your players talking about? What are your friends talking about? My manager is obsessed with Warzone. I don't keep up with the meta. I ask him all the time, like, what's happening there? And like, does that apply to us? Or like, now we have a new content creator on the COD Mobile side. I know nothing about COD Mobile. So finding people who do, just asking like, hey, what do you know about this? And trying to just be a sponge for information. I'm
Yeah.
heavily dependent on other people, especially people in the community. I'm fortunate to have made friends with people who are also fans of the brands I work for. So asking them what they care about and like what they see and what they think has been a tremendous help. Like those inputs help ultimately dictate how I approach things. And um, yeah, I think not driving yourself insane with looking at all that information on your own, because your brain will be overloaded, especially when you have more responsibilities on your plate. The former head of social media at Cloud9, Mateus, tweeted recently that how he stayed up to date on everything is while he went to sleep, he opened TweetDeck and recorded it. He recorded everything that was happening on TweetDeck, and then in the morning would watch it back. And you know, for some people that is a totally valid approach to make sure that they're in the loop. But like for me, that's a lot of information. Like I barely can keep up what's on my timeline. Now I have to think about the stuff that's happening while I'm sleeping. I couldn't fathom it. So my philosophy is just to, you know, talk to people, see what's important to them, see what people are like buzzing about, chatting about, and making that your priority. Even then, you don't have to hit all of those notes. So
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's super important. I saw that tweet and I was like, that sounds like a great idea, but like I would drive myself insane if I did that. Like it's I mean, respect to him, man. That's crazy. But one thing that you guys touched on in like some of the clubhouse panels that you've done in esports and marketing, probably really the only clubhouse panels I really listened to at all. They're great. One of the things you guys touched on was the difference between like social media manager or marketer and community manager. Can you kind of expand on what the difference between those two specialties is? Because I know a lot of people kind of conflate the two and think they're kind of the same thing, but they're really not.
Yeah. Thank you, by the way. We hang out in Clubhouse and talk about relevant esports things as marketers, and I love hearing other people's perspectives or questions on what what's happening in esports and especially in the marketing space. But yeah, it's easy to conflate a social media manager with a community manager because both touch the front lines. You are both being in some way a face for your brand, but they're two different functions that are two different responsibilities. And when you put the earnest on one, it becomes too much to handle. So on the social media front, I see a social media manager as the face and voice of your brand. They're the talking head, but they're the talking head as the brand and not as an individual. They're speaking one to many. I'm disseminating not only, things that are brand building, character building, voice building, but also on behalf of our partners and on behalf of our content that make up those things together. Engagement with our audience is important, but it's not the biggest function of being a social media manager. Whereas a community manager is from the bottom up. You're boots on the ground. It's more of a one-to-one connection where you're building up that loyalty between other people. It's a face and a person you can recognize as a representative of your brand to help build up your Discord, to help, grow and embellish your community, that you put trust in to be a good representative, a good host for your brand, to ultimately make it feel more of a personal connection. And that is more or less how I delineate a community manager from a social media manager. Sometimes their responsibilities will overlap, whether it's through tournament organizing and they need to promote that, or they're doing events with their community that need to be amplified on social, or social engaging with the community because that's what the voice or the piece of content requires. But making a social media manager also be boots on the ground is like making a pilot service its airplane. A pilot should know how their airplane functions and should know the basic services for that plane.
Yeah.
But they are not the engineer. They are not the mechanic. So you shouldn't force a pilot to, which are both equally important on an airplane. Let me be clear, that you should always have these two separate things, and that this airplane could not fly without these two separate things.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I love the analogy. On the community management front, why is it so beneficial to have that one-on-one connection with the fan versus the social media manager? Like you said, they're both important, they're both necessary, but it's kind of speaking in the context of the community management side of things. Why is it so important to have that one-on-one connection along with the social media manager kind of speaking one-to-many? Like, how does that benefit the org in growing that?
I think it's really beneficial because it allows people to make that connection and to feel recognized by something they care about. And a social media manager doing a one-to-many approach can't always give that personal touch and can't always give that special attention that helps nurture and grow a community and grow your audience. So as much as I, as an individual, as a just a esports loving person on Twitter, I cannot reach out to every single fan, or I can't reach out to certain parts of the community. I don't have the bandwidth to host watch parties as much as I would like to, because it's not inherent to my roles and responsibilities. So I personally, as much as I want to get involved with the fans and like be a part of the community with them in that regard, it's just, it's a lot. And so when you're talking about loyalty and like, you want to be the community manager is a role that is like a spokesperson for your community in a sense, and making them feel valued and heard and appreciated. And that's a lot of responsibility for one person to own. So I think it's important to have somebody on the ground, because ultimately your audience is what's building you up, right? And knowing how they feel and knowing what they think will only strengthen your content and will only strengthen your different approaches.
Have there been any situations where you've maybe gotten some feedback from a fan or from something you've seen on social, from people talking, you've implemented it into a content piece? Sorry if you hear my dog barking in the background.
You're totally
going outside soon. But what have there been any situations where that's happened, where you've kind of picked up an idea either from a direct one-on-one conversation or to something you saw on social, that you then implemented into either an organic piece or a sponsorship piece, either one, and that influenced the way that content was made?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm lucky to be close to some people who are super fans of our brands, and they'll tell me, "Oh, I really like this one thing you did. That was so good." And I'm like, "Oh, that's a great anecdotal response to something that the numbers also show performed well. Let's try that again. Let's do something in a similar vein." Or somebody, I forgot who, was like, "Dude, they just did this funny thing on stream that's not like a skill play or whatever. It's not like an ace or whatever. Like, do you want me to, I can clip it for you and give it to you."
Oh, that's sick. Yeah.
So it's things like that definitely help build up the brand, because those funny moments are awesome, and we're not going to catch them all. So when, fans are sending that my way, I'm like, this is awesome. Thank you so much. And those have even built up to relationships where I can then just go up to that person. I'm like, "Hey, is there anything that I'm missing right now?" And get that feedback directly from them. So definitely have taken suggestions from the crowd. And that's definitely made its way into content and help elevate our social game. So always appreciated.
Awesome. Now, with hopefully COVID starting to pass soon-ish, I mean, we
Yes.
hope so. Vaccines starting to get rolled out, and hopefully very soon lands can resume and in-person events can resume. How do you see that affecting your content strategy, your ability to create content, execute on certain ideas you may have? Like, should we expect like new content coming for you guys when that does happen, and we're able to kind of get back in person?
Absolutely. There's nothing we want more than to put everybody in one room. The dynamic of having, them banter and talk and interact with each other in person over
Yeah.
webcam, like the difference between a webcam video and like an in-person video is the energy is just different. Uh, and so that's something we look forward to in content. I think the energy of a LAN is something we've been dying to have again, obviously, given, safety. Uh, there's
Yeah.
just there's just an energy in the room that you cannot capture. And like you might be able to record everyone at home screaming at their TVs, but it's not the same as like everybody in a stadium, chanting defense. So definitely looking forward to that and making it a unique experience. Hopefully, I said this in the clubhouse, but Call of Duty hasn't seen a major LAN event in the Northeast for over 10 years now. And it's something we want to own and knock out of the park. So that's something we're really looking forward to. And hopefully the fans are looking forward to as well, because it's an opportunity for us to show, what we are capable of as a team and like working so hard for that. Will help elevate our brand and its content to the next level. I hope so. Definitely something I am looking
Awesome.
forward to.
Yeah, me too. I haven't been to a LAN yet, so I'm excited for the first opportunity I'll get to actually go to one, hopefully soon.
Yeah.
But as the COD League continues to progress and grow, like what do you think are like some keys to growing the scene in the next like 1 to 5+ years? Like, what do you think is important to making sure it continues to grow, bringing new viewers in, and really making it an esport that can be around for a significant amount of time?
Yeah, I think it's converting the casual to a CDL fan, or I think that goes for every esport. The one thing that a
Yeah,
lot of them struggle with is the everyday person playing the game. Not many of them know that there's even a league version, and that there are
yeah,
pro players in the scene uh, that crush it. So it's bringing that awareness to not only just, hey, we're a game and there's also a competitive league, but by the way, there's a team in New York you should really follow, because it helps me keep my job. No, I'm kidding. But it's also a really cool thing, especially if you live
yeah.
in the tri-state area. Like for us, that's really important that there's a New York team. So really building up that casual fan base, and converting them into like people who are interested in seeing other people play at a really high level. I think that's super important to making sure the longevity of the league is there and prosperous for everyone involved.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing they did that I really liked recently, or Activision did, was like including the COD League calendar in game. Like it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the most obvious spot. I think they could have been placed a little better, but it was there at least. So it looks like there are steps hopefully being taken to get the game or get the competitive side of the game in front of more of those casual fans. But yeah, definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Um, and then a few more quick questions before we start to wrap up. The first one being more of a funny one, like have you ever posted on the wrong account? Like something you meant to post on the NYSL account went up on the NYXL account or vice versa.
I think the worst offense I've ever committed is I retweeted something from the wrong account, but that was an easy like
Mm,
undo. But I've never
yeah,
actually like posted something. And when I did retweet it, it was like a mild offense. Like I retweeted something subliners from Anbox, so which isn't the biggest deal because at the time
yeah,
we didn't have a Valorant team, so it just looked like a parent company supporting what we normally do. But yeah, I've never, thankfully, knock on wood, I've never posted anything on the wrong account, and I've never posted anything personal on the wrong account either. So
Yeah, I've seen people just constantly post about that, like being the worst fear. But I mean, luckily it's never happened to me. I'm still super young, so it might, knock on wood, again. But yeah, that'd be terrifying, posting something personal on the brand account.
yeah, today I took a picture of my ice cream and I was like, please tell me I'm not on the Subliner side right now.
I feel like that would actually do well though. Like that'd be more of a funny mishap, more than like an actual like scary mishap.
Yeah, my ice cream was yellow, so it's very on brand.
There you go. Awesome. Well, the last question I have for you today, arguably the most important question on the podcast. Do you drink coffee? And if so, how do you drink your coffee?
I don't drink coffee because it gives me tension headaches. So I function on 0 caffeine. I can't have caffeine. It hurts. I get headaches. It's bad. So
yeah,
I just am on the internet, no sleep, without any help. So
honestly, it's probably for the better. Like caffeine, once you start, it's a deep rabbit hole. So
bad.
Yeah. But no, I appreciate taking the time to come on the show. This was a super fun conversation. I learned a ton personally, and I hope the viewers did as well. As we wrap it up, though, where can everyone keep up with what you're doing on both your personal side of things and with the brand accounts?
Yeah, so all my personal esports stuff is at Yangsin LV. That's where I spew all my esports thoughts, marketing, and also hot garbage. But if you want more brand things, you can follow our Call of Duty team at Subliners, our Overwatch League team at, oh my god, NYXL, and Ambox is just our Valorant team, which is at Ambox_official on Twitter. Helps our org, also helps me meet my growth goals. So
awesome. Well, guys, everyone who's listening, go follow his accounts. If you're listening on the podcast audio format, they'll be in the show notes below. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll try to put them in the description below. So go give them a follow, not just because we're telling you to, but they do actually post really good content. Especially, I follow most closely the COD scene, and you guys have been killing it, like I said earlier, on the NYSL account with the memes, with just the overall content in general. So if you do happen to be watching all the way to the end, go give them a follow. And if you are new around here and you enjoy this content, you want to see more of this type of stuff, marketing, social media, business, and esports, hit the subscribe button and the like button if you're on YouTube, and follow if you're listening on audio. And with that, I appreciate you guys stopping by, and I will see you in the next episode.